Hello and welcome to Meet Our Makers, an artist interview podcast produced in association with Beats Per Minute. I'm your host, Jeremy J. Facette, and on this episode, we get to meet Aja Monet. Aja is a poet, spoken word artist from New York who has just released her second record called The Color of Rain. It's out now. I implore you to go listen to it. And after years of kind of making her way up in the ranks of the not only New York but just general poetry scene, she released a debut record of spoken word pieces a few years back, and now she's returned with a sophomore album. And in this conversation, Aja and I dive pretty deep into this record, some of the things that led to it, some of the things that inspired it, how she kind of comes at it from a musical angle, the music inherent in poetry, and many more things. We really do dive into also just the art of poetry and what it means to her and what a poem can be and what a poem can do. We talk about the state of the world, the state of ourselves. We talk about poetry in education, coming from my perspective as a public school English teacher and her perspective as a working poet. We actually had a lot to talk about in that regard, and it was really fun and interesting for me to engage with her from a pedagogical standpoint, but also just sort of talking about the weight of a poem and what poetry can do for us and reading can do for us moreover. And so it's a really good, deep, good-natured conversation, and I was thrilled to have a chance to sit down with her. So thank you for listening. This is me meeting Aja Monet.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I know everybody's so busy and there's so much going on in the world. So
Yeah, all the
I,
more
I
reason I
feel,
appreciate you.
yeah, no, same. And I appreciate you. There's a lot of things you could be doing with your time. So thank you.
No, I'm happy to have you for many reasons. The I guess paramount reason why why I invited you here is that you have a record coming out in just under 2 weeks, called
Mm-hmm.
The Color of Rain. It's out May 22nd on Drink Some Water. Um, and we'll get into other reasons why I'm excited to specifically have you here in a bit. But as we approach this big day, how are you feeling as we get closer?
Honestly, I am really, really nervous. More excited than nervous, but I think the thing is when you work so hard on something and you want to share it with people and you want people to be as excited about it as you are, you're just like, I gotta let go of that and just you know, sit with it and be in deep gratitude and be present. So
Hmm.
um I think the thing is there's so much going on in the world that you start to wonder like what's it all worth, you know? Does
Mm,
anyone is what you're doing even a drop in the ocean? And even a drop in the ocean is a part of the ocean. It's important, but sometimes it's hard to feel that, you know, sometimes you can focus on all the other things that you think are more important than you.
yeah.
And so you're like, I'm not important, which is true, you're not. But it's good to not get so caught up in that, to where
Mm,
you forget that you are important. Like the fact that you're not important is important.
mm. No, true. I mean, is that something that you find yourself kind of contending with sometimes is like, because I know a lot of artists do kind of have that struggle of like, there's so much going on, like, how could I possibly be like putting out a record or something like that? But there's a
I
tension there that I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's good. Like, I don't have that problem. I think the
Mm,
problem is, like, I'm in a writer's residency right now,
mm,
and it's so crucial. It's literally like lifeline, it's breath. I'm so grateful, but I'm on a call with you because I still have to deal with the world
right.
in wanting to share something and wanting to honestly give a gift. I think, like, to be an artist that pours so much into something and then you have to fight with the world to give it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to contend with a world that doesn't even know that it is a gift, or prioritize it and prioritize art that feels more like um, entertainment than actually, you know, a creative expression that's like delving deeper into like why we're here and how do we better connect and show up with each other. Um, I think there's always like there's layers. You know what I mean? I think every artist goes through phases and different phases of their life. For me, is I have no question the role of art, the beauty of art, the necessity of it, and what it does for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what it did for me to make the record. Like that is real. You
Yeah.
know that happened. That will always be the case for myself. That's a consistent. That's a thread. That's a through line. Will never change. But I think the part that is difficult is to watch a world that is like being more and more divorced from that
Mm-hmm.
and intentionally um you know being kind of orchestrated to like make art into either this thing that needs to commodify the value of it, you know, and sell things to you, versus to like really commune around something that is actually pouring
Mm-hmm.
into us, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like the battle of like your own intimate personal like relationship with it is fine. That's good. It's when you start to kind of share it that you really start to contend with other people's relationship or lack thereof with art.
Yeah.
Um, and just the way that people deal with stuff, you know what I mean? There's things people just don't know, you know, just people don't understand what some artists have to go through. And I'm not saying it to say it's more unique for artists than it is for the average working class person, but it is a work, it's labor. You know what I mean? What we do
Yeah.
is there's a poem and song on the record called Working Class Musician. Like this is work, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the first line I say is though it be a labor of love, a labor it is. And I
Yeah.
think it becomes a labor really when people be trying to exploit what you do
Mm-hmm.
without actually creating space to value it, you know, and to cultivate more art being possible. So when people get more focused on the product than the process and the intention that goes into it, that part gets is annoying. You know, that's the capitalist, that's the exploitative part that I think artists just it takes you out of it. It takes you kind of away from the reason why you started, and you have to constantly be you have to create boundaries for yourself, and you whether that be your team, your family, your community, you have to make sure that that is a disciplined, like militant, you know, structure, you know,
Yeah.
that you create for yourself because people will test you,
Yeah.
you know, and you could get so caught up in the stuff that has nothing to do with the art.
Yeah.
You know, you get caught up in the functions and the friends and the person is this and who's that and you know, and it has nothing to do with what you actually want to do. And you got to check yourself and make sure you're, you know, you checking in with yourself. Like, no, what do I want to actually do? Because even sharing this album, like, yeah, I'm excited. I want to talk to you about it. That's the most exciting part is I want to talk to you about it.
Mm.
But it's hard to feel like, do people even care? You know,
Yeah.
do they care? Do they understand what you poured into it? Um, is it something that you at some point you got to relinquish it? You got to let it go and just shut up and just be like, let me put it out. Let me
Yeah.
put it out. But there's other parts of it. You know what I mean? You got a
Mm-hmm.
label. You got publicists. There's all these other things that start getting involved, and you got to make sure for yourself you have a clear boundary, and that's not easy for every person to balance. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You learn, you live and you learn.
Yeah. And I mean so I mean, let's get into it. So I mean, like getting into The Color of Rain, I'm always curious when a record like this comes around that feels like an extension of kind of an interlocking but slightly different medium that you were already in. Because I mean, you've been an active poet for many years, but this is only your second recorded record. And
Yeah,
so I'm curious, like when you were writing this one, like is there a point at which you kind of realize it's going to be a record, or is that like an intention that you set?
that's a great question, and thank you for talking to me about it. I really do appreciate it. Um, Honestly, I've been touring with the last record for like two and a half, almost 3 years. You know,
Hmm.
so I've been music has been sort of the ethos by which I've like seen and experienced the world. and traveling and experiencing these global issues that we're facing and the shifting conditions of those issues. I've been seeing those through the world of a touring musician, not just a poet in isolation sitting in a room writing to myself, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so the engagement of what I'm sharing is different. Like how I'm sharing and what I'm seeing and where my perspective is coming from is greatly impacted by that
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the content of the poems. But the interesting part for me is more of the musicality of them and the craft of them and the play, the tonal elements and the meter and the stuff that goes into the stuff that people like might find nerdy, but like I feel like those are the things that reflect my growth the best because people focus so much on sometimes people try to diminish the value of what you're doing because they focus so much on the message of what you're saying. And if they
Mm-hmm.
don't like what you're saying, then they'll find a reason to kind of assassinate your character so that they can devalue what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if I'm only positioned as an activist or I'm only positioned as a poet and there's no room for people to see me as a musician,
Right.
then it doesn't allow people to really appreciate the art of what's being done in the record. And for
Yeah.
me, this record reflects, I think, the development of my relationship of integrating all of those things
Mm.
and that they're not isolated, that the way I see the world influence what I care about. And because of the things I've gone through and because of the body I live in and because of the people I love and the communities I come from, um, I'm passionate about those things because I love so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful that I get to see the world because people have invited me into their experiences of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And um and touring and being able to like work with a band and experience the different spectrums of musicality and improvisation and different types of venues and having to go through your monitors and argue with the sound guys and learn each space. I mean, all those things better you,
Mm-hmm.
and season you in a different way that like when I came to making a record, um, I had this whole other sort of arsenal of like information and skill, that
Mm-hmm.
just organically developed from that process of being a touring musician, not just a poet sitting at home,
Yeah.
observing the world and reflecting on it. I think it was a different kind of engagement, and
Mm.
that I hope that comes through the record. And I say that to say, part of that is so true because I met Michelle and Deggiocello, on the who's producing, and she played bass on the record. She sung on the record, and Justin Brown, who I've toured with, who's my partner, also produced on the record.
Mm-hmm.
And we were touring together, and it was like I think the touring part is a huge part of the story of this record. Like
Yeah.
what I've experienced in light of that, I think this is like the residue of that, or what I've learned
Mm.
is this sort of the residue of that. And I didn't tour with Michelle, but I got to do a double bill with her in Berlin.
Oh,
And
fun.
we had met her before. I've met her a few times before, but that was where we really connected.
Yeah.
And she kind of just hypothetically was like, I would really love, we were talking about records. We were outside, everybody was smoking and chilling at the Rocket Festival in the Netherlands. And, you know, we had seen each other a few times over the tour escape, like just overlapping. And we were having this conversation about music and recording. And, you're backstage, a bunch of musicians, and they're talking about their favorite musicians and da 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 da, is everybody's
Mm-hmm.
gift of gab. And she's like, man, I would just love to put a mic up close and tape to your chest and just have you speak and let's record the sounds of your chest. I was
Mm.
like, what? It was like something like, but it was just so nobody had ever, um, it's nice. It felt good to have someone see something in me that made them think of a creative vision,
Yeah.
you know, of a possibility of a creative vision in what I was doing to help expand and like grow what I was doing, that they
Yeah.
saw that what I was doing was worthy and really powerful and important. And so that was really, I say that to say like that was the impetus of the album, was like the fact that she was interested in experimenting with me through my voice and through the poems. And over time, it just worked out in our schedules. And
Mm-hmm.
I had been in talks about wanting to do another record, but like not knowing where or how that would begin. And I think I just needed someone who really believed in me,
Yeah.
you know? I needed someone who really believed in what I was doing and saw what I was doing as like an art and as a art that was worthy of being done at this time. And
Yeah.
I feel really grateful for that, because that's kind of the foundation of the record, is that I felt a sense of confidence, not just in having toured, but in someone really believing in me that I admire and I look up to so much,
Yeah.
and that has inspired me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, that's
I'm sorry
no,
I
that's
rambled,
fine.
but
No, that's great. I mean, I was gonna ask about Michelle because I've been a fan of her work for a long time, and when I saw that she worked so closely with you on this record, it made so much sense to me that you two would link up because I don't know, it just felt like artistic sort of like kismet that like it makes so much
right?
sense
Doesn't it
that
feel like a
it
superpower
does.
group?
It
It
kind
feels
of
so cool.
does. Like, and it's beyond like, hearing her voice here and there, her bass here and there. Like she helped produce the record. Like she's just with you in this record. And it just, it made a lot of sense. So I was going to ask how that came to be. So no, I'm glad you explained. Um,
Yeah, and I think it's cool to know that like Justin is such a part of it too, because he has
mhm,
such a big percussive soul and like spiritual relationship to music, in a deep way, and is such a student of the Black radical tradition from a musical lens. And so it's so great. I think the biggest thing about this record is to just, the thing I'm so proud of is that I made it with so much love in the
mhm,
room, and I felt loved. And that's such a different space to be in, you
yeah,
know? Then you're wondering like if somebody really values what you're doing, or if they get what
right.
you're doing, or if they're just there for a check, or if they feel, it's like no one that was in that room was like aware of what would happen. Like no one
Hmm.
who we, and there's multiple rooms to be fair, but no one who I was creating with, um in a time where everything feels so transactional and so about what you can get out of the next person, because capitalism is on steroids and it's strangling everybody. It's got everybody in a chokehold.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that still gets me to my core and rocks my heart is just meeting people who are sincerely, genuinely, honest people, you
Yeah,
know, who are not moving from a place of take,
yeah,
but see their position in this world as a part of like that their life is a gift, and that every day we have to move from that sense of gift. It doesn't mean that we don't take care of ourselves and we look after ourselves and one another, of course, um, but that you're not, the American psyche and environment is so unhealthy at this juncture that I don't
yeah.
think we fully have talked about what it's done to the ecosystem of art, what it's done to the ecosystem of our relationships.
Hmm.
But people are not moving from most people are not moving from a free place, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Um, and so it's very powerful when you meet people who are really moving freely and they know that they could be anywhere and they know they
right,
could do whatever,
right,
and they don't, but they're not sitting around like, clocking, you know, the hour with a price tag,
right.
they literally, they want to be present with you and they want to share and create a moment with you and collaborate with you. I think that's the beautiful most, I mean, what more is there to life,
Yeah,
it's what we're here for. So I feel super grateful that I get to make a record where, yeah, I have the resources to bring people together, but that it wasn't like we had all the resources in the world. There's people with so much money and they do way less.
yeah, yeah.
they they offer way less to us.
So true.
So I just feel really, I feel so abundant.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so blessed and so grateful that that the process happened. That's in the universe, that's in the air. It's forever there.
Yeah.
Whether people listen to it or not, it happened, and I do believe it'll ripple in some way, you
Yeah.
know?
So for this record, I mean, you mentioned that you had been traveling for quite some time, kind of taking, bearing witness to a lot of the chaotic goings on of the world around us. I'm sure just not in America, but beyond as well. Um, so for this record, as you were kind of composing these pieces, I mean, were there any sort of like overarching threads that you were kind of aiming for that you felt kind of moving you in a specific direction?
Not per se. I think, you know, we were touring in the middle of multiple genocides taking place, and that was for sure taking a toll on seeing the world
Yeah.
through scrolling your screen and seeing, you know, children being murdered senselessly, and no one who has leadership or power doing anything about it to stop it, you
Yeah.
know? And that is a very disempowering place to be as a human in the world, as a woman, as
Hmm.
a black woman, to see children and feel like you can't, there's not anything you physically can do to stop it.
Yeah.
Um, and doing everything to try to make other people look around you and be like, this is not okay. How are we just allowing this? That feeling was the biggest chokehold of that time. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? That was the part that you had to constantly battle the suffocation of that feeling
Yeah.
of that moment of that. So that was something that I struggled with. But I think, the beauty of music and the beauty of touring with a live band is that there's something that happens in the space of the stage where it's like the one um it feels like the only true portal, to a timeless um spiritual communion, collective communion that is truly collaborative in a creative sense.
Hmm.
So it's like the one true spiritual democracy, it feels like,
Hmm.
because there's this, process and there's this process that you all are in together, and we all agree to do it, and we might have different, you know uh, rules or regulations for how our relationship comes to be, and why we create and what we create for. But fundamentally, in the moment that you're all creating, there's nothing but that moment,
Mm.
and it it demands that we're honest. And so when you tour practicing honesty every day with each other, and you with people who really know you,
Yeah.
who know when you're bullshitting, then I think that it produces a kind of I would like to say, like, a kind of love, you demand in everything else. You
Yeah.
kind of seek it in all avenues of your life. And so when you walk in the world and it looks funky outside, or it looks funny, it doesn't feel like love.
Hmm.
Um, you stand up straight and you ask real critical questions like, what is different about this room, or why is this way?
Yeah.
And there's kind of like this protective barrier of the stage. Like, the stage becomes a place where it's okay to be enraged. It's okay to break down. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to yell. Especially for a black person, like, where so much of our, extreme expressions, or what people see as extreme, is demonized
Hmm.
and used to dehumanize us. Like, my anger is no longer a threat in that space,
Right.
right? So if I'm angry about a situation in the state of the world, if it's on a stage, there is something to protect me,
Yeah.
because people see it as a performance.
Right.
You understand?
Hmm.
So if in some ways the stage has become my shield, it's
Mm.
become the thing that I have allowed that has become the way that I can shield myself as I practice my humanity out loud,
Hmm.
as I express it out loud. And I think
Yeah.
the poems reflected in different variations some of that, like, the poem "Every Medium Minute" was something I was working on through touring, and it became more and more relevant as we're sharing, as we're
Yeah.
going through the world and seeing what's happening. And then I see this is a new poem. It's not from the last album. So it's impacting people in a different kind of way because of what's happening. We're in the middle of war. It's
Right.
a religious, people are making it or claiming it's a religious war, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's about money. And so there's a question of, well, what is God? What is religion? Why are we here? Who are people? People claiming to believe in a God and then inflicting murder and killing people. So these questions came up, and that poem became relevant in a different way. So, yeah, that came on the record. And then there's things like, you come back home and you find out that the your city is in shambles because there's fires,
Mm.
going in. And we were running to and back Winter Jazz Festival while also worried that you know, our home might be in ashes, and then you're glued to the screen and you're listening to the news and you're calling people back home and these real things
Yeah.
that I'm experiencing, then going back home and seeing the soot in the air and seeing the weird neon lights, like at night, like these things are real things that showed up in Hollywood because of
Mm.
the reality of what I was experiencing while also, in the middle of being a touring writing artist, and those things came out into that poem in that way. But then you
Mm.
have something like I Know That I Don't Know, and that's just like us in a studio listening to Michelle say, go play,
Mm.
go just play and figure out what y'all would do if y'all just had a room to just be.
Yeah.
And that was needed too,
Right.
and it was so important to do that. And it was so important for us to show that we needed to do that in this
Yeah.
record, and then there's stuff like, Love is a Choosing and with Mariba, which has this really beautiful, through line that Justin helped come up with. And, there's Elsewhere, which is like super, it's a devotional in some way,
Mm.
I feel. And it's just real organic. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of the songs in the retrospect, you could be like, oh, they were planned. But I mean, I guess you could say everything's planned if you look at, they say coincidence if traced back long enough becomes inevitable.
Mm.
So it's like if you look at it now, we could be like, oh, that was all in the God's plan. It was all in the universe's orchestration.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, you're really just if you're being present with your God or your peace or your truth, you will be guided on the path of least resistance, the path that is meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it felt like. I felt like every poem was just, we just had to be present enough to receive it, in the
Yeah.
time that it needed or wanted to be received. And then once we made a bunch of stuff with Michelle and looked at what we made, we were like, okay, well, we got something. What are we going to do with this? I think we got a record. And they were all different. They're all so different.
Yeah.
So then when we listened to it, it's like, do we have a record? Like, what is the theme? And Michelle's like, it's you. You are the thing that holds it together. That is
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
So your poems, your words is what's holding it together.
Yeah.
So what more, I think she's just been such a, it's just, I'm so grateful for her voice in my head that sometimes I need has
Mm-hmm.
been a voice of just reminding me and affirmation and Justin as well. I think I respect musicians so much and their knowledge feels so otherworldly to me.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to not use words as someone that uses them a lot, as
Yeah.
you could tell.
Yeah.
Um, I love when they don't need to use them, but they still make me feel all the things
Yeah.
I be saying. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely do.
I'm like, you didn't say nothing, but you said everything. And that's
Right.
how I feel with them. I feel so I just love that. That fascinates me.
Yeah.
I aspire to be like them.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you like go in with a written piece, then what's the typical sort of process, do you think, for you of kind of feeling out the melodicism of what ends up on the record?
I think that every poem has a melody, an
Mm,
internal melody. It's really deep because everything that happens in a poem, especially if it's effective, people just think you using words, right? This is why
right.
poetry gets thrown around. Oh, I'm a poet, but not every person that says they're a poet is a poet. A poet is someone who uses poetic devices.
Hmm.
That means alliteration,
Yep.
meter, rhyme, tone, personification, metaphor,
You're talking
you
to an
know.
English teacher here.
But so exactly, but we have a failing public,
Sure.
education. So
Right.
it's really sad that, and those things to some people they do come naturally. I
Hmm.
must say there are some people where that's intuitive. It's just like somebody born with perfect pitch. You can't explain it.
Hmm.
There's certain people that are just born they just speak in meter. They just I
Yeah.
mean you could arguably say everybody does, but specifically the way that certain people move in the world and tell story and articulate their ideas.
Hmm.
There are people that are just talk only in metaphor. This is
Right.
my friend Georgia's just a walking poem. Georgia and Muldrow, she's just a breathing, living poem. She's just spew poetry. She just vomit poetry. And sometimes people be saying that about me, but I think for me, I think like if it's a good poem, it is music.
Mm,
It's doing music because every good poem is literally just a composition of sounds
right.
and meaning. It's the meaning you add to those sounds.
Yeah.
Um, and there's certain things that you can do in the language that give meaning to the sounds of the language.
Hmm.
And when you know those things, then you can kind of use those tricks just like any other musician uses their little refrains and tricks that they learned and study, you know,
Right.
and perfecting what they do. And you can learn that in school, or you could just have a gift for it. You could just, even when you have a gift for it, the only way you get good at it is by doing it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you have to practice, and in that practice, it becomes innate. It almost becomes like, when you go from training wheels to just riding bicycles, like
Mm,
it's no longer, you don't need any scaffolding. You're just like, you're in a flow state. And anytime you go back to the river, you could easily just float along, right?
mm,
So I think that that's the beauty of being a poet, is that when you're doing well and you've studied and you've devoted yourself to this thing, then anything you're writing about, for to some extent, should have music in it.
mm.
Um, because the syllable counts is the beats, and the beats give you a certain kind of flow and rhythm, and it lets you know where you put breath
Yeah.
is so important, just
Yeah.
as much as anything. Silence. I say in the last record, silence is a noise too, and I think
Mm,
most great musicians know that silence offers so much information, so much
absolutely.
music. I think poets know that too. Um, Not all Black poets, because we could be, could be talking forever. But uh, I think that's just 'cause story. We're almost like a quill of just, or a scroll of story.
Hmm.
And especially when you're from a community or people or culture where your stories have not been respected, it produces a different kind of storytelling and
Yeah.
way of seeing story, and the preciousness of that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think like every poem comes with music in it, and you bring that to any musician who understands music, then it's not rocket science. It
Yeah.
doesn't become, it just feels like an extension of like, oh, we just musicians kicking it.
Yeah.
Okay, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna?
Yeah.
But I love that Georgia, Justin, Josh, Daniel, Jermaine, even Bernice, everybody kind of knew that they were there for a poet. It's a
Yeah.
different kind of energy
Right.
than like, oh, we're doing so and so's record. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
a certain musician's record, or of even a certain singer's record,
Mm-hmm.
because there's these structures that people have been taught in their schooling about how a song ought to be made,
Yeah.
and what makes a song, or what justifies or quantifies the structure of the formal structure of a song. I think working with poetry, it allows this sort of disruption of where, the traditional chorus should be. Is there a chorus? Do we need one? Is there a bridge? Do we need,
Yeah.
these things that are kind of typical of the structure doesn't need to necessarily, I'm not moving with those constraints. I have different kinds of constraints
Yeah.
as a poet than the musician's constraints.
Yeah.
Um, so I think when we come together, it's exciting because we're uncovering and discovering something together as
Yeah.
we're both uh, sharing our crafts. Like there's different dimensions of depth and meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and like tones that we're figuring out together in real time. But typically we come with the poem.
Mm-hmm.
All of the songs were made from the poem first.
Right.
The only ones I would say that weren't that way was maybe I Know That I Don't Know,
Mm.
and yeah, everything, even Elsewhere, the melody of Elsewhere was written from the poem.
Mm-hmm.
I gave the poem to Novena. Novena took the lyrics and made out of how I was saying it, and made a melody back to me like as a call and response sort of to the poem.
Yeah.
And then Michelle took that and developed the whole thing with Josh and all of it with the musicians. And then Georgia came in, and Corey, and then it kind
Yeah.
of built
Right.
upon that. But it all starts with the poem.
With the words. Yeah. Um, Speaking now specifically as coming from my sort of English teacher brain,
I love
um,
this.
I yeah, before when you were like, yeah, we're nerding out a little bit about meter, I'm like, no, I love it. Um, but I'm curious as so, I teach 11th grade and 12th grade high school students. So I teach like ages like 16 to 18. And we don't do as much poetry as we should, but we do have poetry units. And I think the thing that a lot of kids don't understand is that how many poets there are and how many poets there have been. And so I'm always curious when I dive into a poet's work, and in this case, speak to an active working poet. I'm curious, sort of like for you, as someone who is in this lane and has devoted yourself to this art form, like who were or are some of your sort of poetic giants, like for you personally?
Well, I think I had a lot of different poets that I loved over the years. I was a very fervent like student of poetry, especially in terms of my elders and learning about who made it possible for me. But I think when I started, it was my peers, and it was the people that were mentoring in the
Hmm.
poetry community in New York City. I would say that that was the beginning of some of my like actual, I don't want to say heroines, icons, about like people that I looked up to
Yeah.
were in the poetry community in New York. And some of those poets were like, there was a poet, Ellison Glenn. There were some of these poets like, I mean, obviously I knew about Amiri Baraka and
Hmm.
and Amina Baraka at that time, but Mahogany Brown was one of those poets. And I think of there was a certain wave of poets that were coming up in New York City, like Suhir Hamad and Saul Williams and Bosia. And I mean,
Mm.
I went to school with a poet named Jeffrey McDaniel,
Mm.
who was a professor, and he was a surrealist. He's a surrealist professor. He still is teaching at Sarah Lawrence. Um, I studied with a lot of different poets. Calvin Forbes at SAIC. Um, just trying to get my bearings of the craft and the art form. And I went to so many different readings. Remember going to Dodge Poetry Fest, thinking about someone like Terrence Hayes and
Mm.
um, Patricia Smith, and seeing all these people, Rachel McGibbons, all these people. When I was a kid, I was just in the ecosystem of watching these great poets as I was coming up. And I do think that's an important thing to note, because I think my real idols that I look to that are doing poetry with music weren't them. They
Yeah.
weren't the ones that I was around. I didn't see them doing that as much.
Yeah.
Tahimbe Jess, I love him. I think of Cordelis Eady does stuff with poetry and music, so I've seen a little bit of that example. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Sayers Ellis, who passed away recently, was one of my professors as well, who had a huge, huge, huge impact in my life,
Mm.
and was a very troubled person in the poetry community that I ended up distancing myself from in a very sad way because of some of the things harm he had caused community members. But,
Mm.
you know, I watched a lot of, I think the reason why I started to distance myself as I got older was because I watched a lot of the people that I considered mentors or idols, like as humans. I grew up and started to just, we just started hearing messy things and
Yeah.
finding out too much. Like, I don't want to know about who you sleeping with and who you did and what you didn't do. And
Yeah.
like some of those things became too much for me to handle as a young person, because I started so innocent and naive.
Yeah.
Started at like 14, 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and then got thrusted into the messiness of human relationships
Yeah.
within communities,
Yeah.
and then I believed our poems were so sacred and so precious. I had this sort of like self-righteous, indignant thing when I was younger about faith and religion and goodness, and what I thought that meant. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I saw people falter and not reflect the values that they claimed in some of their poems, and I needed to take time away, and I delved deeper into my relationship with the elders and
Mm.
the poets before me, and the poets who, because the last poets was a huge mentor. The Abiodun Oyewole was a huge mentor of mine, of the last poets, and going to his house and sitting at his feet, and he's someone that you could sit for hours and learn about everything under the sun, the
Mm.
moon, the nights, the stars. You could learn so much just spending hours listening at his feet.
Yeah.
And I think I really needed that sort of mentorship and that sort of guidance. So I gravitated towards poets of the Black arts movement specifically when I started delving deeper into my relationship with Abiodun Oyewole. Like, that was a specific, I would say, not deviation, but like a specific path
Mm-hmm.
that I started to find myself on, where I wasn't just in like the community of the performance poetry world, the bars and clubs and like cafes of New York City. I kind of started to realize, wait, no, I'm a part of this tradition and
Mm.
this continuum and these people who have kept this art form alive. I came through the New Eurekans, so Miguel Algarin, being one of the children of that lineage too, and seeing Miguel Pinheiro, his story and his impact in that venue, Sonia Sanchez, and
Mm-hmm.
learning of Jane Cortez. And these poets all became sort of like my honorary aunties and uncles that I just like was like, okay, because I'm a part of this community, these are my people. Like, these are
Yeah.
the people that, like, the rest of the world don't know them, but they are literally the goats. Like, they
Yeah.
can do no wrong in my mind.
Yeah.
So I could say that I always wonder about, it's hard to speak about it because for me, I don't see it in individuals. I see it as a part of this like continuum
Yeah.
that I'm I've been a part of for so many years. And there's different phases of my life where different people have had different, you know, variations of like impact and
Mm-hmm.
relationship to the lessons I had to learn for that phase or that era or that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I've been poured into by so many poets, so
Yeah.
many poets,
Yeah.
so many,
Um, yeah, I
so
mean,
many. I mean, I can't Antizaki, I can't, like, it's one of those things where I'll leave you and I'll start being like, damn, I forgot to mention so and so, and so and so, and I spent years with so, and I did workshops
Right.
with this person, and I
Right.
took, I took workshops with Sapphire. I did all types of Joy Harjo. You know what I mean? Like I was a student. Like if
Yeah.
there was somebody to take workshops with, I was going to run. If there was somebody to watch a reading, I was going. Lucille Clifton, sitting at the feet of Ishmael Reed, like Quincy Troop,
Hmm.
like all these people, huge, huge, huge role in my life.
Yeah.
All of them.
No, I mean, I'm glad you said all those names because I mean that's a lot of names that I don't know and probably a lot of people don't necessarily know the work of because I feel like at least in my pedagogy based off what I have, kind of what I have to teach, a lot of it's historical. We don't get to
Mm.
a ton of contemporary poets. Um, which, there's not that there's absolutely no merit in canonical poets, but I would love to dive into more contemporary poetry because I mean, we barely do contemporary prose, let alone contemporary poetry.
Yeah,
Um,
Eugene Redman, like I could go, yeah, I could
yeah,
just keep going.
yeah.
Ted Jones, you know what I mean? Bob Kaufman, you know,
No, this is great.
there's just but the thing that's funny when you say, oh, historical versus contemporary, it's like to who?
Right,
Contemporary to
right.
who? Because I don't know if you know, but Maya Angelou is historical at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
um, Rita Dove is historical. Like certain people that we think are contemporary because they're still living. I mean, obviously Maya's not with us, but
yeah,
a lot of the poets that we might think are contemporary are actually historical. Like all the people I'm mentioning, to me, they're all historical.
hmm,
Even Mahogany Brown, like to me, she's still doing work, but she's historical.
yeah,
She's contributed to the canon,
right,
and a culture in a certain kind of way. And it's like, if we don't tell that story in the now, then we suffer the consequences of the silence of that,
yeah,
of like of the betting on it, on something that we can't guarantee will be told,
yeah,
in the future. We can't guarantee someday off in the future, one day, if people remember and do the work and write a book about it or make a
right,
documentary, then they will know.
right,
It's like history is now.
for sure.
It's literally now. So I get it as an educator. I know there's things that's like on the list you gotta make sure they know. Or they claim that you gotta make sure they know. But
Yeah,
even that list is janky, and
yeah,
don't nobody know it, because if people knew it, I think we'd have a very different system. People be voting different. People be living different. People would be,
yeah. I mean,
clearly people are not reading Toni Morrison.
well, it's funny you mentioned her because she's in my notes because I did have a question in here about prose authors, more people who are more likely historically or contemporarily to write prose. Prose writers who write so poetically, like Toni Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much beauty to her language, but it's not something that we focus a ton on in the curricula. I mean, we do Harlem Renaissance poetry and then we kind of stop. And so there's a whole bunch of good poetry they don't ever even know existed, let alone read. And so it's that sort of like, okay, how can we kind of amend the canon a little bit? Um, that I would love to see happen. But that's a more seismic thing. That's kind of
Yeah.
above me in my
Yeah. People just
position.
people just don't read, man.
Right.
That's
You're telling me.
People don't read, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
They read an Instagram tweet. Let me
Right.
say that. Let me say people read, but they don't read long form,
Nope.
and they don't read off of their screens.
Yeah. We try. We try. I mean, they read The Bluest Eye, and from what I understand, they tend to like it as much as you can like something that is so kind of like harrowing. Um, but yeah, they don't. They don't unless it's handed to them and we do it with them. They often, yeah, they don't read long form things. And that's where poetry can be so appealing to some of them, I think, is that it's shorter form, it's a lot quicker to actually read, but you can still spend just as much time unpacking it.
Yeah.
And that's what I would love to do. I mean, there are so many prose writers who write poetically. I mean, Toni Morrison's one we teach. I would love to teach people like Leslie Marmon Silko or Tommy Orange, or people who are writing now and writing so poetically. If we're not going to be able to inject more poetry into our educational system, it doesn't all have to be just the stuffy old stuff. I don't know how else to put
Yeah,
it.
I mean, well, there's like Sandra Cisneros, Jamaica
Right.
Kincaid, like
Right. We do
there's a
have classes at my school that do Jamaica Kincaid. I don't teach her, but I know we do teach her.
yeah.
And we have done
You gotta
Cisneros.
send me some other ones from today because there's a lot I don't know about people today too. You know,
Hmm.
I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
And
Um,
there's so much more out there in the world, you know?
yeah. One contemporary poem we read is actually one of yours.
Oh, really?
We do. We in this class I teach, which is sort of like a college level writing class. We read an older poem of yours. I think it's from 2015. It's Say Her Name, which we read in a class that is centered around, vaguely centered around the sort of concepts of beauty in all permutations of that word, and the ways in which we can maybe upend the definitions of beauty and who creates those definitions of beauty and what it looks like and where you can find beauty, unlikely places to find beauty. And we actually are in a unit right now that includes that poem. So actually, like last week, we we read it and
Which poem is it?
it's called Say Her Name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I love doing that poem with them because they largely, I mean, I've taught this class 3 or 4 times now, and they largely don't know about that phrase or where it comes from. And in the poem, you name a lot of women. They don't know those women. And so it gives us a really good sort of open doorway into a tough conversation that I think is really good to have with them. And I feel like that is one thing that is one among many things that is nice about teaching poetry with them, is that it can get at a lot of things that other things we teach don't really get at.
Yeah. I mean, I hate that poem, you know. So so I hear you and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, and I think the part that I really look back on is even with the poems that sometimes I still write, you know, doesn't
Hmm.
mean I always love every single one I write. It's
Right.
even now. For me, it's like the fact that it had to be written. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? The fact
Yeah.
that it's a poem that like if it'd be up to me, I wouldn't want it to be shared ever
Hmm.
again. Because I don't want to write those poems, you
Yeah.
know? And then there's this assumption that like, oh, you're an activist because you care about the world. It's like, no, because this stuff like I would, you know, if I had it my way, Wole Soyinka talks about this, you know, really like I'm a peaceful, selfish person at the end of the day. I just want to be to my lonesome. I want to walk, you know, the grass and lay
Hmm.
down and, you know, just be in the sun and just make my food and love the people I love and read my books and write my poems about very simple things about my
Hmm.
silly day or my silly heart.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like when you're seeing the world in shambles and you're seeing people be murdered senselessly for no reason, I mean, it does something to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can't speak for everyone who it doesn't do anything for, but for me it does. And you know, so and you create from a place sometimes of that despair, that hurt, that heartbreak, and that
Hmm.
frustration, and somehow that's the way people archetype you, you know, or
Yeah.
box you in. It's like, oh, okay, well, since she's all deep and serious about this, she must not know how to laugh.
Yeah.
She must not have to also wash her ass and fart and blow her nose, and you know what I mean. It's
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
and be stupid and cry and stumble and fall and figure things out. Like it's like clearly we're humans figuring this thing out. And I'm grateful when people look to poems that have to deal with issues that really deeply have moved me and make me, you know, care about the world. And also I wish I could just only write love poems.
Yeah.
Spend my whole day. I mean, consider Say Her Name a love poem for sure. It is a love, an ode in some way to
Yeah.
love. I just wish there was more about the abundance of feeling loved and being loved in a world that was loving.
Hmm.
Wish those were the poems that I could write, and I could write them from a real place and be like, wow, man, isn't it amazing? We live in such a loving world where people look after each other and take care of each other. Look how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Oh, what it does to my heart, what blooms and flowers and blossoms because of the love that I get to experience every day. But that ain't the reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Saren, it's like I want the kids to know about those things, and I also want to protect them. It's just the sadness of that tension of being like,
Hmm.
I don't want you to even have to worry or think about those things because it's just a waste of your time,
Mm. Hmm.
Life is too precious. Like we should be living and learning and growing with each other and taking care of one another. But instead, somebody's out here trying to figure out how to murder the next person. Like there are people that spend their days trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
That's sick. It's a
Yeah.
sick world. So
Yeah.
that's all I'll say, man. Thank you for teaching the work. I really do appreciate it. It's no shade, no tea. It's
I know.
just sucks that
No, I know. I definitely hear you.
there's other poems, there's other poems I do too. And
Yeah. No, and I mean that's a really good point. I mean, like the colleague of mine who teaches this class with me, we put that poem in our plan a few years ago, and hearing you say that like does make me want to go, well, like there's other work, there's newer work. You have a whole album coming out of new work, and like it's still relevant. Like why don't we pull from there? So maybe we will going forward.
yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
there's levels to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm growing, so I pray and I'm learning how I want to write in this phase,
Hmm.
and what are the things that are true to me now? What are the things that how do you speak to what's going wrong that you're frustrated by, but also what's going right, and I'm
Yeah.
learning how to do that better too. Like
Yeah.
how do I write about the people I know are doing right in
Yeah.
this world and I know are loving the way I want to be loved and and creating the way that we ought to be creating and looking after one another. So that's my challenge to myself is that I also have to write into that, more.
Yeah.
That's more of, and I think the music has allowed me in this record to be a little bit more playful about that. So I'm prayerful that the next record it'll just only continue,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
I can continue to show my more softer, vulnerable, dream like imaginative, you know, possibilities in
Yeah.
in that creative space, in that expressive space.
Yeah.
Some of that is in the record though, for sure already.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um, yeah, it's a beautiful record. The beyond the words, I mean, the musicians you have, the music, the sonics, it's so beautifully produced. Um, I'm excited for people to hear it.
Thank you.
So yeah, we should say again, this record we keep talking about is called The Color of Rain. It is out May 22nd. Aja, I want to thank you deeply for chatting with me about this record, about poetry, about all of it. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me ramble. What
Oh,
a nice
anytime.
I just be
I love it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.